Okay, so the title might be inflammatory, but I promise it's not at all. Maybe it is. I don't really know how people interpret things on the internet anymore, but I promise that I'm not intentionally making it that way. In fact, this was a really interesting video idea that you guys had mentioned I should try. So you know what? Let's try it. Let's see what happens. In this video, I'm going to discuss the average cost of living with obesity versus the cost of doing a GLP-1 treatment. Now, this is going to be a bit difficult to weigh out and to compare because there's so many variables and obstacles and assumptions that we have to make to get solidified numbers that can actually be representative to make calculations based off of. And that this is also going to be hard to do because we're also basing the first standpoint off of an average male or female and their income potential, as you'll see soon. But what I'm going to talk about directly is what obesity costs an individual in terms of added food costs, added medical bills, as well as added income loss. Then I'm going to compare the prices of if that person had started a GLP-1 agonist, what they would resultably pay in a fee for that GLP-1 agonist, as well as the existing obesity problem that they're experiencing and trying to fix with the GLP-1 agonist. Now, for those of you who do not know what a GLP-1 is, I've been saying that word like crazy. It's a glucagon-like peptide, and it basically exhibits the experience of not being hungry. It's the things you've heard of like Ozempic and Wegovy, these compounds that people take, famous people or just normal general population people, to lose weight. There are actually dozens of these peptides now. There's not just Wegovy or Ozempic. It's far from the only option, and they're being widely used in our modern society. Now, again, it wouldn't be fair for me to just calculate the usage of GLP-1s and say that that is comparatively what you're going to be paying versus if you're obese. I'm going to do it as if you started a GLP-1 and you're still obese, having to pay for some of these things as you transition away from them as you lose weight. It's also going to take the assumption that these people are generally trying to already be healthier as they're taking the GLP-1. So essentially, some of the costs from the prior comparison of obesity are going to be still applied in the GLP-1 group. And before I even get started with this video, let me just say that this took a lot of time to sort out. I tried to get as much accurate information as I can using public databases and much more, including watching hundreds of online videos about influencers eating, like a full day of eating, which is crazy. So please subscribe. It does me more good than you could ever imagine, and it takes you just a few moments of your time. I'm trying to get to 20K as a small YouTube channel, and I've put hours and hours and hours into this thing, and it would just be so awesome to see that come to fruition. But if you don't want to, that's totally fine too. Don't stress it. So first of all, what we're going to need to do is find out the average cost of obesity, specifically in males. This is going to include the relevant costs of being obese, such as healthcare and the many other things we've discussed. However, I think it's extremely important to define obesity because many people think of obesity as simply being overweight. However, I don't agree. While being overweight is certainly unhealthy, it's not critically unhealthy. It's not a mortally risky endeavor to be doing. But also, in your mind, you might think of obesity as my 600-pound life people, and that is far, far, far in the deepest end of obesity. What obesity is clinically defined as is having a BMI of 30 or higher. However, a BMI has its limits. BMI, by the way, stands for body mass index. This basically averages out your body mass compared to other people's, but it doesn't equate for things like muscle mass. It doesn't account for if I'm 12% body fat, yet I have 30 more pounds of muscle mass than the average Joe, I'm going to have a higher BMI even though I'm considerably more fit. So I think we can agree to disagree that being obese is, yes, having a high body mass index, but also having a high body fat percentage, somewhere around, let's just say 30% body fat. Let's just say, for ease of calculation, at 300 pounds, close to 100 pounds of their total body weight would be fat mass. If we break that down into actual calories, that's about 410,000 calories in human mass, which is pretty fucking ludicrous. Okay, so we've defined some terms. Hopefully this helps you generate an idea of what we're going for here. Let's get into the cost of things now. One of the most widely cited studies on the topic was published in Health Affairs, showing us that the average annual medical costs for individuals with obesity are about $1,429 higher than those with normal weight. Adjusted for inflation, that figure today is a little bit closer to $2,000 annually, just in direct medical expenses. One critical feature of this quote is having them person have insurance. These people have insurance that they did the study on. If you don't have insurance, we're talking about a significant increase in annual costs. The average cost per year from obesity in the US healthcare system is $173 billion. Those prices are projected to increase by $66 billion by 2030, as quoted by the Lancet Journal. This means that on average, obesity per person costs our entire society about $10,000 or so a year. Now, that's not their direct costs, but we just assume that without insurance, and if they were getting decent medical care and had typical medications that someone who was obese would have, insulin, metformin, probably a statin, something like a blood pressure medication, an ACE inhibitor or ARB, they're going to be spending a handsome sum of money. We'll touch on just how much later. Now, let's talk about food, because people often talk about food deserts and certain foods not being available to them, so they have to go for poor options of food, which are also what people quote as cheaper options than whole food. Just never garnered an understanding for, because I've been living this lifestyle for decades now, and I've never seen that become a reality. Whole foods are pretty much always cheaper than not whole foods, but hey, people with obesity are more likely to consume highly calorically dense diets, basically nutrient poor foods. They have a high consumption, they're overfed, but undernourished. Why? Well, these foods are often cheap up front. It might seem like a good idea to buy something that's pre-packaged, pre-made, and all you have to do is throw it in the microwave, but in reality, over time, it does cost you more. As well as they're just heavily marketed. There's scientific teams going into the development of these marketing products. I mean, they're not food anymore, they're marketing products. They have colors, they have saturation, they have smells, they have every kind of key stimulus that they can try to trick your mind into buying those things. But here's the kicker: the true costs of obesogenic diets really add up over time. Studies have shown that people with obesity tend to spend 15 to 20% more on food annually, which for when this study was done is around $1,500 to $2,500 per year, depending on specifically household income and geographical location. The double kicker here is that these prices were estimated in 2005, and we all know how much cheaper life was in 2005 by a honestly depressing amount. That was when the dollar menu still existed at McDonald's, like the best menu in the world. You get a McDouble and you get a McChicken, and then you split the McDouble and then slap the McChicken in the middle and slap that together, and you have the best burger that has ever been created by mankind standards. Back then, it was easier to and cheaper to go to an all-you-can-eat buffet than make lunch, breakfast, and dinner. But things are different now, a lot different now. Don't worry, I did the math. You see, what I have done is studied hundreds of what I eat in a day videos from obese people, and I really feel like I've degenerated my time doing this, but hey, I did it for you guys, and I'm going to save you the pain it caused me.
Welcome back to what I eat in a day as a plus-size girly. I had Dunkin' medium iced coffee with caramel and oat milk, y'all already know. Then y'all already know I picked up some donuts for my friend and I. Burger King, because I wasn't sure if I would like Longhorn, and I didn't love it. I got 8-count nuggets, onion rings, half french fries. Chocolate. Out
of all of the videos, generating average prices based on the meals that were had on average, trying to make all of this very fair. I didn't take people who were doing ridiculous things as well as other people who were actively trying to diet, because those are very different parties from the group that we're talking about. And what I came out to is about $60 a day in food spend, which would equate to about $21,600 per year. I think we actually just solved people's inability to buy their own homes and stop renting a shitty apartment. Because when I did my taxes in 2023 as a business owner, you have to do your own taxes. It is a motherfucker. But I calculated the total I spent on all food, not just going to the grocery store, but all food, eating out included. And I spent a whopping $16,500 on all of the food. Now, to give you some insider perspective, I eat several times a day. On average, as a pretty active person, maybe even as an athlete you could call me, I eat around 4 to 6 times a day. My meals consist of a lot of meat, beef, eggs, rice, vegetables, many different fruits. I love fruits, so I eat tons of different whole fruits. I also love dairy products, especially yogurt. I must have yogurt daily. Like, I fucking love that shit. And doing my average caloric intake for 2023, yes, I averaged out my entire calorie intake for an entire year. It was about 3,900 calories per day, which for most people's standards is a ton. Most people would look at that number and be like, dude, what? However, I'm fighting Muay Thai. I'm actively bodybuilding. I love training with weights. I enjoy cardio like a psychopath. I do basically 10,000 steps every single day. So for me, it makes sense. And if we take the difference between these two potential incomes, we come out with a staggering number, which we'll talk about later. But before we get to that number, here's the staggering problem: income loss, something that not many people tend to think about when it relates to obesity. This is what actually keeps people at the bottom of the barrel, so to speak. Studies from the Journal of Occupational and Environmental Medicine show that obesity is associated with lower wages and reduced earning potential, especially for men. Why? Well, it's a mix of discrimination, higher absenteeism, meaning awayness from work, you're gone, and lower productivity due to health-related issues, meaning they can't perform certain tasks other people can as quick as they can. And just to be clear, another astonishing point is that these numbers were once again pulled from 2005. So we have a massive amount of inflation to consider somewhere in there. But the wage gap linked to obesity is to be estimated around $1,500 to $3,500 a year annually for men, again in 2005. And if you factor in missed promotions and career stagnation, this figure would be much higher over a lifetime. Research involving male Swedish siblings revealed that men who were obese during adolescence earned approximately 9% less income in adulthood compared to their non-obese counterparts. Other research has suggested that over a lifetime, people with a lower BMI make about 14% more than their obese counterparts. So to do this math and to make it simple, let's just take someone making $80,000 a year. We'll multiply this by 50 years and then increase that wage by 2% each year to account for inflation, and then wage changes to account for inflation, and we achieve a net income close to about $7 million. Now, if we reduce that earning amount by 14% approximately, we have a $947,000 loss, almost $1 million. The new total amount being earned is just shy of $6 million, $5,800,000 basically. While this isn't staggering, imagine if you just had $1 million to spend across your lifetime, how much more you could afford for yourself, for your family, that car, that house. Like, there's a lot $1 million can afford a person. But basically what this nets you is a $10,000 loss per year on your average income in 2024. It's actually a bit more, but I'm not a statistician, okay? I don't know what the fuck I'm doing here. So these are the numbers that we're left with per year with all of these expenses considered. And keep in mind, these are expenses that are added on top of a normal BMI person. Healthcare, rough estimate around $10,000 to society, but to an insured individual, and not to just the cost to society, but to themselves, we're going to say around current modern 2024, about $3,000. Food's around $5,000 more than an average person would spend per year. And the loss of income is quite staggering at $10,000 per year, which again compounds significantly over time, which is $18,000 more spend per year than a person with an average BMI. So now let's get into the averages of costs that extend themselves to the GLP-1 use whilst trying to get healthier. For the uninitiated, GLP-1s mimic a hormone in your body that's naturally produced. This slows down digestion, reduces cognitive signaling for hunger. It helps regulate blood sugar massively. In plain terms, they make you feel fuller for longer and generally cut cravings. But here's where things get interesting. The retail cost of Ozempic, one of the most popular and well-known GLP-1 agonists, averages around $900 to $1,200 per month without insurance. That's about $10,800 to $14,400 annually. So already we've almost busted the bank for the difference within obesity to normal BMI individuals. But here's the catch. This doesn't account for insurance coverage or manufacturing discounts or saving programs on the products, which can significantly reduce the out-of-pocket prices for these certain things. For many people, the cost drops by about $500 to $1,000 per month, or $2,400 to $6,500 yearly. But that's not so great because we're already just about half as much higher than we were with just the obesity. Furthermore though, a study with the Lancet Diabetes and Endocrinology showed that losing 10% of your body weight can reduce medical costs by up to $500 per year, just from fewer medications and doctor visits, again in insured individuals. Additionally, losing weight can improve productivity, reduce absenteeism from work, and increase earnings potential, as we've spoken about many times over. So you might be thinking, well, Kolton, they're still going to be obese. How is this going to benefit them? They're still living the same lifestyle, so their cost of living all across the board is still going to be just as high. You're right, but it's kind of like starting a business. The first 2 to 3 years of starting a business, you're going under. You're not making money. You're maybe if you were very, very, very fortunate, breaking even. Those first 2 to 3 years are actually deadly. You were living at your lowest lows, holding on by strings, and you don't know if you're going to make it. But once that 4th year turns around, you start getting a little bit more comfortable again. You have a little bit of profit to expend on yourself and make life a little bit more reasonable. Once year 5 comes and passes, people start calling you lucky and say if they only had the opportunity that life gave you, they would be in a much better position and shit like that. The reality is that using GLP-1s massively invests in your future. But furthermore, it instantaneously reduces the cost of food because genuinely, you will not want to eat. You won't have cravings. You won't have a desire to go do anything to eat more, unlike where you would have before had a very high food drive. Groceries become immediately less expensive. You start just automatically selecting healthier options, and going out for food isn't really a common trend anymore. So those added eating costs per year go down exponentially. Furthermore, a 10% reduction in weight reduces all-cause mortality like you wouldn't believe. You become less dependent on insulin, metformin, blood pressure medication, statins, and other forms of metabolic modulators, saving you thousands of dollars. And this all happens relatively quickly too. This isn't everything, however. GLP-1s are in a legal gray area. They can be sold publicly as research chemicals. This means websites like modernaminos.com sells GLP-1s for a very low cost compared to what you'd be buying it from the pharmacy for, at a price that defies logic and lets you know that the healthcare system and pharmaceutical companies are just a literal scam. If someone was to go this route and even use code Coach Kolton, they would find themselves with a lot more money to spend per year, having not spent that on pharmaceutical grade GLP-1s. You'd basically be spending about only $1,000 at most per year on a GLP-1 product. But I'm not stupid either. I understand the implied risk when purchasing something from a third-party supplier on the internet. It seems a bit sketchy, and it could be. Quality control won't be the same as what it is in Merrick or Pfizer. I'm just implementing kind of a full spectrum analysis here. But important to know, in 2023, 8% of the population, or roughly 26.5 million people, were without health insurance. Those 26.5 million people simply wouldn't be able to afford something like the brand name product. So that kind of would be a route that they could take if this is legitimately something that they need to be better. But moving to an insured model, this is how we're going to make our calculations. The average cost of living whilst using a GLP-1 agonist, we'll just say an average, so again, $4,000 for the GLP-1 per year. Food will be significantly decreased by the use of a GLP-1, so let's just assume $3,000, so a $2,000 reduction, which I think is fairly fair. That's about, 10 times going out to eat less is already $1,000, so pretty easy. Medical bills after losing about 10% body weight, which wouldn't take very long, would significantly be reduced, and then furthermore, that would compound on itself as the year progresses. So let's just say there was a $1,000 reduction in total medical bills, and that led you to $2,000 per year on medical expenses. Then we'll just say loss of income, and this is something that honestly you won't see change for quite some time. I would say at least 2 years, because 1, you have to lose the weight, and 2, the people around you, the right people, have to notice the weight loss and then think of it as a really impactful thing to say, let's promote this guy. Or you would just lose the weight and start fresh with a new job and apply and show up and represent yourself in a much better formatted way, making that job much more likely to hire you. But that just doesn't happen overnight or in a month or 2. It takes some time. But that equates to about 19,000 USD per year. Now, I know this is extremely rough math and there's a lot of variables at play, and I'm making a lot of assumptions to make this work. But just statistically speaking, would you pay $1,000 more to have a healthier body and better lifetime income, as well as more than likely a much happier self? I know I would. It's something that I would not even have to think about before signing that check and throwing it over to whoever's offering. So I know it might not seem like the most attractive idea to take these kind of compounds to lose body fat. However, I would actually argue it's much healthier than the alternative. But what do you guys think? Where does the Ozempic path end for these obese individuals? And one thing I didn't even address is how there is this trend of rebounding weight after someone does stop Ozempic and they gain all, if not more, of their their fat mass back. I know this is a very trivial video, so this is in a situation where the individual themselves has chose to live a certain lifestyle that far exceeds the one they had before. But reality is different, and understandably, people don't do what they should all of the time. I hope you have a great day. Thanks for watching.